about sowing greatness in people because it's a nurturer's purpose, okay? And it's not that I don't think that we don't know how to nurture people. It's more that we don't realise that we're called to nurture people. So this is your check-in. You are definitely called to be a nurturer. Can't say you didn't know now. So going forward from this point, you now know that you are called to be a nurturer. To move as a nurturer, you need to put selfishness, pride, insecurities, and the credit, like wanting the credit for something, to one side. So it is a sacrifice, and it is difficult sometimes, but Jesus has called us to a higher standard. So we're called higher, we're called to sacrifice this, and as mature Christians, we're called to walk this out as our purpose so that we can guide the next generation of Christians growing up, and we can mentor them and allow them to grow spiritually, and they can see us being nurturers so that they become nurturers of people, of families, of churches, of communities. So this is why it's so important for us to do it as mature Christians. Please ignore, I have a slight cold, so I sound quite funny, but I'm owning it today. This is falling. Let me see. Stay. Okay, so let's better understand the role of a nurturer. It's not biological. People are like, oh, you're either a nurturer or you're not. That's not true. And it's not gendered. Okay, so men, please, you are a nurturer. Lots of people think it's a female job, and it is not, okay? Because let's look at the definition. So to nurture as a verb is to care for, encourage, support growth and development of someone or something. And then a nurturer as a noun is a person who provides emotional, physical, and spiritual support to help someone else flourish. So since when did them things become feminine? It's not feminine to provide emotional support. It's not feminine to provide physical support, spiritual support in order for someone else to grow. And these words are not feminine, but we have placed it on the females of society. You're the nurturer, I'm the provider. Right? Yeah, we have done this as a society, but why have we done this? Because if we remove men from the equation of nurturing, we have a damaged generation growing up, and that's exactly what the world wants. Okay, so let's put back in the men into this equation, because it's not a female role. Now, people use this scripture to throw it at females. So in 1 Thessalonians 2 verse 7, Paul describes nurturing like a mother caring for their child, right? So the Amplified Bible says, "But we behave gently when we are among you, like a devoted mother tenderly caring to her own children." And so we see this scripture and we're like, oh, okay, so it's the women who do it. And that's not what Paul meant. Like, Paul was basically saying, if you want to see nurturing in its truest, purest form, look at a mother nursing her child. It's like the greatest example of a true nurturer's heart. Okay, because when a mother is nursing a child, everything else doesn't matter right now. So your insecurities, your pride, what you need to do next, what you feel unsafe in, everything else just stops and you nurse the child. So you give the child time. So you give the child your presence, and then you're serving the child by nursing them, okay? And there are the two things that a nurturer needs is you need to be present and you need to have a servant's heart, okay? And so Paul uses that as an example to show you the truest form of it. So if you want to know how to do it, look at the example of the mother, not that you have to be a mother. Because like Paul himself was a great nurturer. For anybody who was doing the discipleship course, we have read the book on Timothy. Paul nurtured Timothy into greatness. Paul sowed greatness into him. And in turn then, Timothy did great things. Okay, so Paul nurtured Timothy. He In 2 Timothy verse 1, if you go through, you'll see Paul encourages Timothy, and then he instills courage in him, and then he reminds him of his spiritual heritage. And that's what Paul does in order to nurture Timothy into greatness. So this is like spiritual mentorship. It's nurturing faith and the gifts of service for future service. And we're called to do that. We're called to nurture people for future service. So it's not just for families. It's for your family, it's for church, it's for the community we're called to nurture. So my thing is, when I was looking at this, I was like, so the question is, what's stopping us from embracing the role more fully? And I was looking at different things that stop us doing it. And there's reasons why we don't nurture, and then there is barriers why we don't nurture. Okay, so the reasons why we don't nurture is usually our choice. Okay, so we've decided not to nurture because of these reasons. And then the barriers that stop us nurturing are things that they're blockades, that don't allow us to be a nurturer because we're dealing with something else. Okay, so the reasons, I've 3 of them. The 3 main reasons why we don't nurture is, the first one is we don't believe it's our calling. Okay, the second one is we think we lose authority when we're a nurturer. And then the third one is we're just unsure how to do it. So I want to look at each of the reasons. So the first one, it's not our calling. Lots of us have spoke with God and talked to God about our purpose and our calling and what it is in life. And we think, well, nurturing is not part of that. But we are all called to be nurturers. So whatever you believe your purpose or your calling is, you need to take that nurturing and put it in with it, because we're all called to do it as part of our calling and our purpose. And I want to show you your evidence of why you're all called, okay? Because I have my evidence of why I'm called to be a nurturer, but your evidence, I want you to think about it. I want you to think about some teacher or adult or coach or someone who has made such an impact on your life, that changed how you looked at something, that helped you overcome something. We all have that one person where we can look back and go, wow, they did that for me and it changed who I was. Something deep in me changed when they did that for me. We all have someone like that. And if they can do that for us, they did that through nurturing us. They didn't do it by shouting at us, because we all also have them teachers that roared and screamed at us and made us feel stupid, and we went, they have damaged me for life, right? So it didn't work by shouting or giving out or telling us what we were doing wrong. This, if you look at how this person impacted you, it's usually that they nurtured you, which was encouraging you, spent time with you, was there to pick you up when you fell. That's your evidence as to why you should be a nurturer. And I want to share my experience with a person who did that for me. So in school, I don't know if it's probably public information at this point, but I'm dyslexic. So I've always struggled with reading and writing and pronouncing words. It was something that was always really difficult to me, but no one ever told me I was dyslexic. I think my mum was told when I was really young, and my mum had a big fight with the teacher, because back then it was seen that the teacher was calling you stupid. Okay, so I grew up afraid to read out loud because I would mess it all up and people would laugh at me. Okay, so this teacher, Mr. Houlihan, he was my school liaison officer, and he was also the drama teacher in my school, so of course he knew me well. And he then later became my principal, which was amazing for me. But when he was my school liaison teacher, I missed an awful lot of school, and I would have been very rebellious when I was in school. And so he used to take me out once a week out of class, and I loved this because I got to leave class, right? And he'd take me out once a week and he'd sit me in his office and I would drink tea and eat biscuits, right? Now, I suppose for him it was that he was trying to get me to share information about myself and what was going on outside of school that was causing me to act like this within school, I never shared anything, right? I had learned very young that you guard your heart, because if people get this information about you, they're going to use it against you, because that was the environment in which I grew up in. And so I did not share anything about my outside life. So we talked about drama and school work, and he encouraged me, and he was just present. He was just there. And one day in English class, we were reading a novel, and I was called to stand up and read a page of the novel, and I stood up and I started to panic. And when I started to panic, all the words on the page just all blur. So they just look like ink smudges across the page, so I couldn't see it. And then my eyes started filling with water, and then I started crying. But I was tough, Emma. So this can't happen. I'm crying, everybody's going to see it. So I threw a wobbler in the class, threw my book. I'm not reading that book's stupid. And I stormed out of class and I left, okay? And so in my next class, Mr. Houlihan came and called me out. So the teacher had gone to him because she was aware that he would meet me once a week. And he called me out and he was like, "You were crying today in class." And I was like, I wasn't crying. I couldn't see the page. I think I need glasses. And I was making up all these excuses as a young, rebellious teenager does. And he encouraged me, and he was there, and he was like, "Look, I'll talk to the teachers and tell them that you don't want to stand up and read," because I kind of said something like, "Well, I can't read anyway, I'm stupid." You know, this just passive remark that I just put myself down, because that's what we did. The following week, he went away, he left, he didn't do anything, but the following week I was called out again, and I was sitting in his office, and he gave me a page, and there was a little paragraph on it, and he said, "Read that," and straight away something rised up in me, and I was like, "I'm not reading," and he was like, "Calm down, read it to yourself, I don't want to hear you reading, I just want you to read it so you know what it says," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I read the paragraph, and then afterwards he asked me loads of questions, and I answered all the questions very well about what was going on in the paragraph, and he said to me, "You see, you're not stupid, and you can read." And I was like, "What? I can't read." And he was like, "Well, if you weren't able to read that and no one told you what was written there, how were you able to answer all the questions?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he was like, "You can read. You just get nervous when you have to read out loud, and that's okay." And so he encouraged me, and he gave me a book. And it was the play Dancing at Lunasa, which is a play that's set in Donegal. I would have never read a book, but because it was a play, I was like, "Oh, I'll give it a go." And anyone who reads plays knows that plays are written like the name of the person and what they say, the name of the person and what they answer, the name of the person and what they say. So all the other stuff doesn't matter. That's all left down to your imagination. You build all that as you go along. And so it was easier for me to read. I came back the following week so excited. I was just like, "That was such an amazing story, and this happened and this happened." Now, him as an encourager, he didn't go, "Yeah, I know, Emma, I read it." "I learned that before you." He didn't do this, right? Which is what meant he got excited with me. And he was like, "Really, what was your favourite part?" And he got me talking about it, and he gave me another book. That man nurtured me into a position. He sowed greatness in me, because now I am a great drama teacher. All because he gave me a book and taught me that I could read. It was in me. I just needed support. And he nurtured me to that place. He sowed a seed that has grown in me. So it is all of our jobs to nurture someone and impact them like that, okay? The second reason why we don't do it is that we believe that we're going to lose authority. Right? And this is a big one, because it's like when you're fighting for authority, you feel like you have to hold on to it so tightly. When it's given to you by God, when you are positioned by God, you don't need to hold on to anything, it's just yours. You need to think of people like in the service industry, healthcare workers, nurses, we've loads of nurses here, people who work in hotels. They all serve you using all the attributes of a nurturer, and yet they don't lose the authority or the status that they work here. If you want to go into the kitchen, you have to ask them. Yeah? If you arrive at a hotel with your bags, a hotel does not want you walking around a hotel with your bags, right? because it's going to make the hotel look messy. It's a trip hazard. They don't want your bags anywhere within the hotel except for in your room, right? And yet we all arrive to the hotel with our bags, and when you get to the desk, do they go, you need to go put your bags in your room now, please? And you're like, well, actually, I'm going to go to the bar, or I'm late for my dinner reservations. And they're like, no, you need to put your bags into your room or they're going to look messy, and they're telling you what you're doing wrong and they're giving out to you. No, they don't. They come to you and they say, we're going to help you with your bags to your room, and then you can go down and book your table. They help you. And then automatically, they get your bags into your room without having given out to you. And they still have the authority. They didn't have to shout. Okay, so you don't lose your authority by nurturing somebody. Because your authority as Christians and as mature Christians is God-given. You are positioned by God. So the last one is that the reason why we don't do it is that we're unsure how to do it. Okay, so I said it before, how you become a nurturer is that you are present and that you have a servant heart. Okay, and a servant heart can be developed. Don't use that as an excuse. Sorry, I don't have a servant heart, I'm out, peace. Okay, you can develop a servant heart by doing little things at a time. So you just need to be present and you just need to have a servant heart, like that teacher. I didn't open up to him for nearly a year. But because he was present, he was able to say to me, why were you crying in class today? And I then blurted out, because I was comfortable with this person, because I'm stupid, I can't read. And then he knew, activate servant heart. How can I help her? Because she can read. She's just struggling. Okay, so you need to be present and you need to have a servant heart. In Proverbs 22, verse 6, it says, train up your child. You know that scripture? It's like a foundational scripture, especially when you become a parent. You're like, what? Where is all the parent scriptures help? It says, train up your child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I always thought that like everything I tell them to do, and that they have to be a Christian and they have to grow up in the church, that they won't depart them from church. And then you see children departing from church and you're like, oh, what happened there? Did you not tell them? And it's not the case. But when you are training up your child, you are instilling things in them subconsciously without them even knowing, okay? So we have a unique way of nurturing as a mother, and you have a unique way of nurturing as a father. So as a mother, there's this attachment theory. It's by Dr. Mary Ainsworth, if you ever want to look at it. And she says that children grow up fostering secure attachments, emotional regulation, and a sense of security and empathy through a mother's play and love. So because you are playing with your kid, hugging your kid, kissing your kid, they automatically learn that there is security in attachment, that they can regulate their own emotions, and that there is a sense of security and empathy. That's what they learn through you just playing and hugging and kissing them without you ever saying, this is how you do empathy. They just learn that automatically through you nurturing them. As a father, and this one blows my mind because I really see the after effects of it, because I grew up in a one-parent household, so I just had my mammy. So when I look at this, I'm like, whoa, that's what happened. As a father, you know the way dads rough play with children? And you're just like, for me, I'd be at home going, John, you're going to drop him. No, let him down. Leave him alone. And John just be throwing Ezra around and throwing him up in the air. As a child, having rough play with a father builds resilience for you. It builds emotional intelligence. It builds risk assessment. It builds confidence. It builds social skills. And it nurtures the ability for your children to set boundaries. That's just by a father playing. You don't have to tell. Now, of course, as I grew up, so the set boundaries one is one that I can really identify with, because I obviously didn't have that, so I didn't learn to naturally set boundaries, okay? Ezra, when John comes running in after him, John will say, "Don't you get on my bed!" And Ezra runs, and John chases him. But usually before they start running, Ezra goes, "Wait, you're not allowed to tickle me. You're not allowed to tickle me." Because Ezra knows he is defenseless when John starts tickling him, right? So Ezra has set a boundary. He's doing that since he was 3. He could set boundaries from when he was 3. I never learned how to set boundaries. And so because I grew up without a father, I didn't set good boundaries. And so I learned how to set boundaries by, after things happen, going, "Oh, I didn't like that. Don't want that to happen again. I'm now going to set a boundary." And that's how I learned. So if you are in a single parent household, it doesn't mean that as your child grows up, you can't talk to them about it and teach them that way. But for them to learn it without you ever speaking of it, a father has to do that. And that's how a father nurtures it. And a mother has to do it this way, and that's how a mother nurtures. And you can do all this without ever having to have a talk with them about setting boundaries. They learn how to do that naturally. So now that we know that it's all of our callings and all the things that kind of stop us doing it, the reasons why we make excuses not to be a nurturer, what is the actual barriers or the blockers that inhibit us from doing it, okay? And there's 2 main things that like really, really stop you nurturing somebody else. And it is you're in survival mode, or there's areas of your life still in survival mode, or you're self-righteous. And when I say self-righteous, people go, "Whoa, we're Christians, we're not self-righteous." And I hate to break it to you, it sounds like a really harsh, tough word, but it's not. It's something that we fall into in areas in and out of our walk all the time. Self-righteousness is made up of 2 things, insecurity and pride, and we all suffer with them. Okay, so it sounds harsh, but I don't mean it to be harsh. So I want to start with survival mode, okay? Because if we can start to recognize areas in our lives where we're in survival mode, we can start to step out into the role that God has given us with confidence and with love, yeah? So, okay, so survival mode, what is it? It's when somebody experiences like trauma or difficulties in their environment when they're growing up. It can have a deep and lasting impact on how you function in the world. Trauma can trigger a survival mode response, which is essentially a constant state of alertness. A person's brain is focused on surviving, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological. It means that their energy and their focus is primarily spent on managing their own safety, even in situations that aren't life-threatening. So it's self-preservation, okay? It's essentially that you are trying to protect yourself from a previous threat. That's what survival mode is. So think of it like this, right? So if you're running a marathon, right? And so you're concentrating on your time, where you're going, obstacles in the way, other people, pole, tree, curb. I'm saying curb because John always falls off curbs. And so you're focused on these. If you're in survival mode, you're trying to protect yourself from a previous threat. Okay, so something that happened growing up or as a teenager or in past relationship or something like that. So in order to protect yourself from them, you keep having to look at them. Keep check, where are they? There's nothing coming from me. Are they coming back? Okay, and so you're keeping your eye on them. So you're running a marathon, all right? And then you're like, is it coming behind me? You go, whoa, Paul, is there anything there? What's this path related? Oh, don't trust them. Whoa, tree. Okay, and so you're not focusing on what's before you because you're trying to protect yourself from what's behind you. And that's what survival mode is. Now, think of it like this. I ask you to nurture somebody. I want you, while you're running this race, to encourage them and help them. Keep them with you. Help them through it. Because mentally they're not strong enough to get through it. But their legs will get them through it, so they need your encouragement. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Grab this person, like, all right, let's go, here we go. Tree, whoa, what's that coming behind you? How you doing? Tree, right? Am I focused on nurturing this person? Because I'm in self-preservation mode. I'm so busy trying to protect myself and make a way for me to get through that there is no time left, no energy, no nothing to smile, nod, and be present for this person. And so when you're in survival mode, there is a barrier that's blocking you from nurturing them because you're just not able to. And so we have to start trying to find ways in which we can come out of survival mode. Okay, so there is, how we look at people and how we look at things going forward has been primed by our environment. Okay, so how you were brought up, relationships that have gone bad, that has all primed you to see things in a different way that might necessarily always be true. Okay, and so that's why God tells us not to rely just on our emotions, because we will go, oh no, don't like them, but God said they are destined for greatness too. And if we rely on our emotions, it is so clouded by all of this stuff. And I want to prove it to you, right? Okay, so there was this experiment done, and I just am fascinated by this, right? They got 100 actors in America, and they trained these actors to all do the same thing, right? So 50 of the actors had an iced coffee, and 50 of the actors had a hot coffee, okay? And the actors were to go out to this park and approach somebody walking through the park, just an everyday person. And all of them were trying to do the exact same thing. So they had to walk up with their coffee, be it iced or hot coffee, and be like, oh, sorry, could you hold this for me? And the person would take the coffee, and then they'd struggle to take out their phone. They'd swipe it, type in the code, and they'd go, oh my goodness, thank you so much, you're so kind, and continue on in their day, right? 100 actors had to do that to 100 different people. And then workers on the experiment, once an actor did it to somebody, the workers would watch the person walking through the park and kind of follow them, and then approach them with a clipboard, okay? And they'd say to them, hi, how are you? I'm wondering if I could have 3 minutes of your time. I'm not selling you at, and I don't want you to do at, and I don't need you to sign up to at. I need just 3 minutes, and if you give me 3 minutes, I'm going to give you this $20. And of course, they went, sure, okay, as long as I don't have to sign up for it. And he said, I want to read you this little story. It's really short. And at the end, I'm going to ask you a question. Is that okay? Yes, go ahead. So the experiment worker read the story, okay, which was like 3 really short paragraphs. And then at the end, the person was asked, what would you say is the main attributes, traits, or characteristics of the lead person in the story? Of the people who held the iced coffee for that split second, 81% said that the person was cold, uncaring, unapproachable. 81% of them said it. And then 80% of the people who held the hot coffee said that the main character was warm, genuine, inviting, friendly. 80%. They went on to prove that the environment primed how they labelled another human being. It primed them minutes beforehand. Now, if I was running that experiment, I would have said, no, that won't work. Maybe we give away 50 free iced coffees and 50 free hot coffees, let them consume them, right, that the cold or the hot is in them, and then ask them, and then you'll get, no. They were like, no, because humans are so movable that we don't even need them to consume it. We just need them to hold it for a split second while you take out your phone, and now you look at people differently. Like, this blew my mind. I was like, how many people have I labelled or judged and discarded simply because my environment beforehand primed me to not like them? You ever get some, like, best friends were like, when I first met you, oh, I didn't like you. And all of a sudden, you're best friends. Because your environment is telling you you're not to like someone who's very similar to you, or things like this. Our environment is priming us. So we are labeling people due to our past environments. And then we're supposed to be adults and mature Christians now. And so when we go through hardships or struggles and stuff like this, or we're judging people, we're not to tell anybody, because we're mature, okay? And so our attitude goes one of two ways, okay? Your attitude goes that you either dislike everything and look at everything really bad because your environment was bad to you. Don't trust anybody. Guard your heart. Don't let anybody in. Stay away from them. They're going to reject you. So everything is bad. And you see the negative side of everything. And everybody knows people like that, right? The emotional vampires, the people you're just like, oh, I cannot be around you. You suck me dry. We all know these people, okay? Or the other way our attitude can go when we're trying to deal with these is that we sweep it under the carpet, hide it there, because we have to show pure joy because we are Christians and everything is great. And didn't the book of James tell us, count it all pure joy? And so I was like, well, God, you don't want us to do that. You don't want us to sweep it under the carpet and pretend it's not there. So why in James chapter 1, verse 1 to 4 does it say, consider it pure joy when you go through trials? Yeah, we know this. I was like, surely you can't want me to consider it pure joy when I am being crushed. Because if that's what Jesus wanted, there wouldn't be a book of Psalms or a book of Lamentations, right? Because that's them going, oh, life is rubbish, everything's so difficult, and I'm finding it so hard. But you, Jesus, say, I am more than a conqueror, right? So if God wanted us to consider it all joy, pure joy, he would not have given us them books, okay? So then I was like, right, well, I need to know what this word pure means, because I'm getting it all wrong, okay? And I found this. So when we look at the word pure joy, we think that it means joy exclusively, just joy, okay? But it's not joy exclusively, it's the intensity of joy. So when God says, consider it pure joy, he's not saying consider it exclusively to be joy, this trial that you're going through. He's saying consider that there can be intensity of joy, and joy can expand there. That joy can grow. You can find something to be grateful for within your storm. So Jesus, he is saying, I know human emotion. I know that you're going to be feeling sorrow, feeling hurt, feeling pain, feeling hardship, fear, resentment while you are going through this trial. But I want to give you another perspective. I want you to think, is there an area where joy can grow here? Is there an area where joy can expand in this place? So once I knew that, I needed to start looking, well, where can I do that? And how can I do that? And so I want to give you an example in my life. So one of our greatest family memories is we were in Disneyland when Erin was about 9. And when we were going in to queue for a ride, it started to rain a little, and so we went inside, and then we could hear people coming in out the back behind us in the queue, and they were giving out. It was raining, it was awful, it's ruining Disneyland, yada, yada, yada. By the time we came out of the ride that we were on, which if anyone's been to Disneyland, you will know there's like an hour and a half queue. We came out, it was a thunderstorm. Torrential rain. Now we are on our summer holidays and we are Irish, so we are in shorts and vest tops, of course. Right? And it is torrential rain. And Erin looked at me and went, puddle fight. And I was like, puddle fight? And we ran through Disneyland. Now, everybody else had either left, right, and gone home, or back to their hotel, or there was people huddled along the walls, right? Because if you're in Disneyland, there's no shelter. There's no shelter anywhere. Unless you go into a queue, there is no shelter. So people were like standing against the walls where the rain was going that way, right? And down Disneyland has a main street that goes from the castle all the way to the entrance gate. And there's music blaring down the street. Me, John and Erin ran, skipped, jumped, danced, sang our hearts out. We were spinning around. We were kicking puddles at each other. It's one of my favourite memories of my family. There was people standing along the walls of the shops all cheering for us and stuff. It was hilarious. There was people videoing us, people taking photos of us, and it was such a joy-filled moment. But when I looked back, we taught Erin to love the rain out of necessity, right? And so this is where, in my trial and in my storm, I allowed joy to grow, okay? So when I was younger, my mum moved to Cavan when I was just turning 16, so I was in Dublin on my own. I was oftentimes locked out in the rain, stuck in the rain. My school was really far away. I would trek from really early in the rain and come home. I learned to be miserable in the rain, right? I found it really difficult. I'm on my own, I'm so young, it's so hard, okay? And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, because I was completely allowed to do that. It was hard, right? And then I had Erin, and I had saved up money to pay for insurance on a car when I was 18, and then I fell pregnant. And so I made the wise decision as a mother to use the money I'd saved up for insurance for all my baby stuff. And then there was never another option to save up again, right? I just didn't have anything to save. You were living from paycheck to paycheck. It was just not, I wasn't able to do it. And so we'd be having to go to church and stuff, so I couldn't drive. And that's why that became one of my triggers that sent me into survival mode. And people go, why don't you drive? And like, oh my goodness, well, why don't you grow up like me on your own, left to fend for yourself? And then I'm like, why am I reacting so badly? They only asked me why I don't drive. But it was a trigger for me because it was something that put me into survival mode. And so we had Erin as a young baby, and our church was 2 bus rides away. It would take us about 2 hours to get there. And I remember one morning, and we were about to leave the house to go to church, and Erin was crying. And she was like, I'm cold, I don't want to do this, I just want to stay home. And I was like, we have to do it. And then I was like, no, don't shout at her. And so I bought rain gear for her, and then I said to her, let's go jumping puddles in your rain gear. And then when we were going to church, I would cover her in the rain gear, and she was allowed jumping puddles, and she learned to enjoy and embrace the rain. Now, in the beginning, I'd be going to church, and she'd be like, yeah, it's so fun. I'm like, yeah, it is great fun, right? And I didn't like the rain, but I was allowing joy to start to grow there. And then seeing her joy brought joy to me. In the little moments, it was still hard. And that joy, when it says consider it pure joy, so consider that joy can expand there. That joy expanded there all the way up to us running through Disneyland, everybody else hiding from rain and completely loving the moment, and it created a beautiful moment for my family. So when you have triggers, and when you have something that you are reacting to with people, just know that it is something that has been primed by your environment beforehand. And what can you start to do that you can start to allow joy to grow there? Because believe me, I was not joyful just because Erin was in wet gear and I wasn't. It was not joyful for me, but I was taking another perspective that she's going to enjoy it even if I can't. And through that, I learned to enjoy it. When you start to realize that there is these things that trigger you, you start to think, what can I do to not allow that to trigger me? And so you start to make moves in which you start to heal wounds, okay? And I was able to heal wounds enough that I was able to open up to Kathy and Sergio and tell them about my struggles about driving and tell them about all the barriers I've put up that stops me driving. And they nurtured me into driving. Because Sergio said to me, you get your license and I'll bring you to your lessons. I will commit to bring you to 12 of them. And Kathy and Sergio brought me to every one of my lessons. Now, beforehand, if people had said, you get your license and then I'll help you, I would be like, well, screw you. That's not helpful. I was left on my own and I would have been triggered. But because I was starting to work on the wounds that was been brought up when I reacted to people that asked me these things, I was able then to allow myself to be nurtured. And it has changed my family's life. Like we're still very grateful. We still jump in the car to go somewhere and go, oh, I love driving. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Kathy and Sergio. And we still give our thanks for it. So you get to a point where you start working on them wounds. And they're not going to be better all of a sudden. There's still things that people say to me and I react and I go, whoa, there's something there. There's something else there, and I need to go and look at that. But I'm in a mindset where I'm healing wounds. I'm not trying to open them. So you get to a point where your warrior has to sit down. Your warrior has to sit down because you end up in a place where you are positioned by God to receive. And you don't need to prove to someone, oh, hang on, I worked hard for this. You don't know what I went through to be here. You don't know what I worked on. We don't have to prove that we deserve it. Because I am positioned in God that I just receive. I don't even have to do anything. He just gives it to me. Because I've set my warrior down. I don't need to fight anymore. And when things rise up, I'm going, oh, I'm going to heal them. I'm not going to fight. And as mature Christians, we need to set our warrior down. We are positioned by God. I'm not saying you didn't earn them through tears. But right now, you are worthy to receive just because. Just because you are a son or a daughter of the King. Not because you have to strive for it. Okay, so that is survival mode. And then the other one is self-righteousness. Okay, so self-righteousness is made up of two things. It's your insecurity and pride. And people are like, insecurity and pride, sure, they're opposites. But they're not, they go hand in hand. Okay, and how you know they go hand in hand? When you feel insecure about something, okay, you start to see it everywhere. Do you ever get that you feel insecure and you're like, oh, well, they can do it. Oh, they can't. Right? And so you start to see it everywhere. And then you look at the person who can't do it and you're like, another flawed human being. You're not able to do it either. Oh, actually, in fact, you're worse than me. Oh, yeah, they are worse than me. Oh, maybe I'm not so bad after all. Do you know what? I'm just going to tell my friend here because it'd be helpful for them to know that they can't do that. So now I share it with my friend because I'm helpful. And now you know what they're rubbish at. Now you know their secret. And now we look at all of them and the focus is now off me. I am now full of pride because of my insecurity. So they go hand in hand together. Okay? And self-righteousness just comes from us not understanding grace for ourselves. When you understand grace for yourself, then you're able to extend that to somebody else. So if I had understood grace in that insecurity, I would have been able to say, I really struggle with that. I find that really difficult. It's something I'm quite insecure about. But you know what? I'm working on it because I have grace for myself. And therefore, I never even looked at somebody else because I was busy looking at the log in my own eye instead of the speck in somebody else's. Okay, so when you find yourself and the self-righteousness rising up in you, consider grace for yourself because you are positioned in God. You are worthy to receive grace, to receive gifts, to receive whatever He has for you on your walk. whether you think you deserve them or not. And so because you are worthy for grace, you will then extend grace to other people, which will allow you to nurture somebody else. So true nurturing comes from understanding your own need for grace and then offering the same grace for other people. It comes from working on your own wounds in order not to explode on other people. I want to encourage you that there is like this transformational power in God's love for each of us. He heals broken hearts, he restores weary people, he enables you to love others, and as we heal, we can then nurture people along with us. You don't have to be healed, fixed, perfect to nurture someone else, but you need to be healing, walking with God to nurture somebody else effectively. Because then as you learn, you'll go, oh, I need to just be present for you. I don't need to preach at you or teach at you. I'm just present. I'm just here. And when you fall, I'm going to catch you. Like think of a baby when it's walking. You put the baby up against the wall and you go, come on. If the baby falls, you don't go, why did you fall? What'd you do that for? Didn't you not know? You walked a minute ago. You don't. You pick them up and you celebrate and you're like, yeah. And if the baby could talk to the baby, go, why are you cheering? I just fell. And you're like, yeah, but you did walk. And that's our job. We're in the corner cheering on. And so I want to leave you with a question. If all your public ministry was gone, would you still have a ministry? Because if we're nurturing people, you will always have a ministry. So if all your public ministry is gone, would you still have a ministry? And if you don't have a ministry serving each other here, what is stopping you? What is the reason? What is the barrier that is stopping you from serving your church community? And is there a way to work around it? People are like, oh, I work every Sunday. Well, can you commit to one Sunday every 6 weeks? Can you commit to one Sunday every 2 months? Is there a way for you to work around it? That you are present here in a way that is serving people, and then when the time comes to nurturing them, you're there. Let's sow greatness into nurturing people because it's all of our calling. Let's pray. Jesus, I just want to thank you. I want to recognize the worth of the role that you have given us. God, you value nurturers, whether they're serving families, churches, or workplaces. You value us. Lord God, I pray that we can set healthy boundaries when nurturing somebody. That we're not going to give constantly and not replenish ourselves, but that we can stand on the sidelines, cheer somebody else, and then have that done for us also. I pray that we lean on you, Jesus, for strength, that we don't have to do it alone, because in you we can nurture. And I pray that you activate servanthood in our hearts. I pray that you activate it so that we can nurture our families, our churches, and our communities. I pray like in Galatians 6:2 where it says, bear one another's burdens, Lord God, that we start to do that for each other because of our servant hearts. I ask all this in Jesus'